Hello and welcome back to Podcasting's Practice. I'm David, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Rob, mine are he and him.
And I'm Alistair, my pronouns are also he and him.
Yeah, and joining us for a very special, slightly delayed episode due to adventures in North Macedonia, it's returning favourite, Juliet Jacques.
Yeah, hi, pronouns she and her. And yeah, it's really good to be back. I'd have been on last week, but I was doing an event in Skopje, the capital of North Macedonia, and
I will not accept the slander. Place. It is only Macedonia for me.
Well, there are some historical disputes about that, which have been exacerbated somewhat by the Skopje 2014 project, where they just like filled the whole city centre with like reactionary chintzy tat. Basically, they thought it would be a fun tourist attraction if they just built loads of statues of like Alexander the Great and Philip II of Macedon and all these other people like in the town centre, and like built all these like shit neoclassicist facades over all the good brutalist architecture. But the
Macedonian statues guy is a definite vibe, though. Like, I kind of enjoy that anyway.
It's the wet dream of every fucking like at cult trad crit at trad. Yeah, at God, I can't remember my own joke. But it's a sort of wet dream of all those fucking like marble statue Twitter, avatar. Yeah. X the everything at people, and maybe we should just send them all to go and live in Skopje because they fucking love it. The fun thing is like they're not allowed to call any of the Alexander the Great statues Alexander the Great because there's a treaty with Greece, and like one of the conditions of like the country being allowed to like enter into talks to join the EU was that they de-antiquitize, which meant they just had to stop naming everything after Alexander the Great. So, like, the fountain in the city centre is called like the Great Warrior or something. Like everyone knows it's Alexander the Great, but they're not allowed to say so. It's incredible.
We'll call him the Great Fountain. No, that's too obvious. Alexander the G Fountain.
It's kind of mind-numbing. There's just like statues on every corner. Like I never need to see a guy on horseback again. Honestly, like I did also go to the.
This is the worst Rome Total War mod I've ever seen.
Oh my god! I mean, like the thing is, Skopje's built on a fault line, right? Like the reason it was full of like brutalist stuff is because there was a huge earthquake in 1963, and they had to rebuild the whole city, and they got this like Japanese modernist architect called Kenzo Tanga to redesign the city, and loads of interesting like Yugoslav modernists to help rebuild it. And of course, after independence in the early 90s, you know, the fash were just like, look, if you like any public service that works, you're communism, and you know you're the oppressor. So you know, just the far right have, you know, got in control of the aesthetics department and have just filled the town with just awful shit. And I just said to a friend, look, this stuff will all survive another earthquake, right? And they just gave me the look that I usually get when I ask a question like that.
I mean, I do sort of abstractly like the idea of having, you know, like the Dutch dementia village, but like we just reserve a city for like statue freaks, and they can all just live there and pretend they're in ancient Rome and shit in a bucket. You know, like I don't mean to, you know, demean the lives of the people, you know, who live in Skopje, but in general, like, you know, it's a better deal than building like a fucking migrant processing center in Albania. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, they've probably done that as well, to be fair. They are on the border. But, you know, like, there's two things I sort of thought about when I was there. And one was the Georgy Gospodinov novel Time Shelter, which takes that Dutch dementia village as a starting point. And it's all about, like, wars that are caused by people wanting to live in different versions of an imagined past. The other was just the idea for, like, writing a short story set on Mars after a bunch of trans people go there and find the ruins of, like, Elon Musk's sort of Ozymandias. On like an abandoned Martian settlement. So yeah, look out for that. It's a very strange place. I did also go to the North Macedonian Cup final, which was very good fun. I saw the local team FK Varda beat a team called FC Struga 2-0, and joined in a pitch invasion at the end. Like loads of kids just ran on the pitch, and I sort of watched them for a while. And when I felt absolutely sure I wasn't going to get arrested, I went and joined them. So sort of like managed to climb over the advertising hoardings with some help because like just my legs are so fucked from decades of playing football.
But the police can't possibly arrest all of these children.
Well, no, exactly. hopefully they won't just arrest the big one. But yeah, like I even managed to shake hands with the Varda manager who played 4 games for Sheffield Wednesday in 1998. So what memories he must have. But yeah, it's an incredible night. And it was nice to just have a break from looking at statues of an unnamed warrior.
Yeah, say what you will about socialist realism, but at least they believed in something.
Well, these guys believe in something. I mean, you can't argue with that.
Yeah, that's...
Anyway, so yeah, visit Stalker, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, now that we've raked in the big bucks from, tourism Skopje, let's... Let's briefly, before we start, with the usual stuff, I did want to start briefly by laughing at the Labour Party, because, it deserves it, and it is very funny. They've run out of money, which is always good to hear.
Who could have possibly predicted?
Maybe they should have some financial rules or something.
Yeah, I mean, have they considered, consolidating all their loan payments into one easy to manage monthly payment? And they'll just, they'll pay us a commission for the privilege, Praxis Cost
Klarna,
LLC
is that anything?
Making your Labour membership membership payments in 4 easy installments is among the more cursed things I can think of, to be honest.
Yeah.
Big F's in chat for the golden arches shaped hole in Labour's finances.
This is from Labour List. It's basically, quote, the party is unable to balance the books and will need at least £4 million to fight elections in 2025. So, good luck with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just an advert, isn't it? Really?
I mean, it is, in a way, but, it's... And also, for totally unrelated reasons, I read a summary in Labour Hub from Jess Barnard, who's one of the few decent people left in the Labour NEC. If you can be decent, be in the Labour Party, and so on and so forth.
Yep,
I can hear you, David.
Yep.
No, because she reported that the Labour Party will no longer be reporting membership numbers to the NEC. And I assume that's because they're so high that any number given is just out of date the next. But no, the actual
Stack Overflow every time.
Yeah,
I like them so much that I've joined twice.
Yeah, that'll be 8 easy installments on Klarna.
Yeah, and the Labour Party loves its members so much they won't stop emailing you even when you do leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, the explanation given by the party to the National Executive Council is that they can't give the numbers anymore because the party is too worried about leaks. Because membership numbers, I assume, are now confidential because, it's just simply going too well.
Yeah, lots
I like
of
that was confirmed by Jess Barnard telling everyone. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a leak confirming that this was meant to stop leaks.
I mean, to be fair, this is, and this is, I got this from a friend of the pod, Phil Burton Cartledge's blog. Basically, this financial instability is by design. It's not, just that the members are leaving. It's basically if you make yourself dependent on these big donors only give during, the big election cycles and then fuck off. But they actually like, a party that's chronically short of money because then 500k or, a couple of extra suits to Keir Starmer buys you much more influence than a party that is on a secure financial footing as it was under one Jay Crummins.
Right. But that's not necessarily true. What this says is that these fools overspend when they don't need to in the first place because you can buy any of them for a tenner.
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of yes and no. It is also the Labour Party signalling we would like to have your big donations and are therefore open to, whatever whispers you may have for our delicate ears in the meantime. So, like, yeah, I'm sure they'd like to have more money, but it is also just a strategy. The Tories do the same thing. Like, the Tories, every time they get out of government, they have to, like, sell their offices and shit.
Yeah, I mean, but it is that, extremely obvious double edge where businesses are obviously hoping to buy influence in an incoming government or a government that's expected to, remain in office. But if you're looking like the shit on someone's shoe of political parties in 2029, why would fucking Ronald McDonald, fork out £4 million for, to keep Wes's head that shape when they can, are they going to really have that many qualms about, trying to buy fucking Nigel Farage's patronage?
Well, I mean, like these people are still in government.
That's a risky strategy, to say the least.
Like, these people are still in government. If you need a favour tomorrow, or like some small changes, like the Labour Party's still your home. Come the next election cycle, yeah, they'll probably all shift to Farage.
Yeah, but all it costs is like a pair of concert tickets for you to get the Grand Vizier experience. That's all it is.
I mean, maybe Farage is cheaper. Like, maybe all Farage will want is just like some really nice Lincolnshire sausages or something. Like,
to be fair, if I could be the Grand Vizier of the Sublime Port of the Labour Party, I think that would be quite a cool role. Like, lots of elaborate fabrics and headwear.
Yourself. Just kill yourself.
I think Farage would probably do it just for a signed photo of the Queen.
Yeah. Another one of those tiny CRT TVs that he, salutes the Queen.
Yeah.
My TV that I keep above the microwave for optimal viewing pleasure.
Missing out on important news because you just had to have your super noodles now.
Well, speaking of optimization, I wanted to return to something that I briefly mentioned, I don't know how many episodes before. Do you remember Humphrey AI?
How could I forget?
How could I remember?
Well, I've got 4 little letters that might explain how, Jamie.
Well, Jamie, not for you then, but for our precious listeners, Humphrey AI is the government-owned AI system that's supposed to like automate all governmenting, so like they can fire a bunch of people and do efficiencies.
It's
yes.
named after the fucking guy from Yes Minister, right?
It is, yes, it is. Yeah,
I remember this.
Oh
shit.
no, fucking! Oh, they wish the West Wing happened here, don't they?
Yes, they do. So it's being rolled out in its alpha phase in 25 local councils at the moment, and its main use so far, at least according to
adding Dorian to various council bills.
Its main use so far is hopefully fuck all if it's the alpha version. Jesus Christ, like.
But it's like what it's being touted as doing at the moment is like it takes the minutes of all the meetings people in councils are having for various purposes.
I heard Keir Starmer could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send him around.
See the thing about taking minutes in a meeting? Usually someone who has to be at the meeting ends up getting dicked with that anyway, so how is this saving time or money? Well, you don't have a bunch of guys whose only job is to take minutes at meetings.
Well, I don't. And I also kind of think that, like, especially for like, look, taking minutes of the meeting fucking sucks. But for like junior employees, it does help you to like work out what was being said in the meeting is actually important versus what was just rubbish. Is kind of like a good skill to develop. But that's kind of.
My eyes glazed over and I saw God there. Like, what the fuck were you saying? Like, taking minutes being an important skill to learn.
Well, it's not taking minutes not an important skill, but separating the wheat from the chaff in an hour's worth of bullshit is an important skill.
The most important aspect of taking minutes for a meeting is that you're essentially writing your own history. That gives you immense power in an organisation in a really stupid way.
In my NHS jobs, that was always my job. And I was just working, I was like secretary basically, and yeah, my job was to take minutes. But I had a history degree, so I was very well qualified for it.
Yeah, I have a degree in English literature. That's what made me qualified.
Exactly. Yeah, I just kept like writing a load of stuff about like the boss not being allowed to be named because of a dispute with another NHS trust. I just had to be like the big man.
They call it the boring tapestry.
But yeah, but it's not just like the internal meetings of, I don't know, department versus department or whatever. It is also, and this is from the government's own press release, touting, the new advances in AI government. Quote, the tool also helps take detailed notes in meetings between social care workers and supervisors, allowing workers to focus more on support instead of being bogged down by bureaucracy. Well, I'm looking forward to the cases being discussed in those meetings being handled accurately.
Is that even what it's for? Is it for casework, or is it just for, like, bullshit management stuff?
I don't know.
Like,
this is not specified, so, like, who the hell knows?
Oh my god, this is the apotheosis of this meeting could have been an email. Like, the email can now just be gibberish.
Yeah. But yeah, this is only the first, tidy rollout of Humphrey AI. In the future, Humphrey AI will improve essential services they are responsible for delivering to residents, including planning approval, housing, pest control, and parking permits. So,
what the fuck do you mean? Is it going to build the fucking houses?
No, it's going to simply approve the planning. After the AI has cast its fucking expert eye on it.
No. You said planning, and then you said housing as two separate things. I'm going to bet there's a comma between them. What the fuck do they mean, housing?
I don't. The fuck do I know? It's just like I'm more interested that they're also going to run pest control. It's like, hello ChatGPT. That's this rat in my kitchen, but he's really good at cooking, and he can steer this guy from under my hat. What the fuck am I supposed to do about it?
They can't keep getting away with this.
I think you'll find they can't. Well, maybe they can't. But I just wanted to tell you one more thing about this, because apparently, again, this is from their press release, but it was like just regurgitated in a bunch of papers. Is that according to the government's own statistics, if fully implemented, Humphrey AI will do $45 billion a year in productivity savings.
Oh, fuck off! It will.
I mean, yeah, sure, right, okay.
And I was
the fun thing about productivity savings are that until you cut jobs, they don't exist.
Well, I was curious, because I was like 45 billion, and I think that's a year, if fully implemented, etc., and if it works, which it won't. That sounds like an insane number. So I just had quick skim, and actual government.
Just on a quick skim of that number, assume assuming here efficiency savings means sacking people. Assume a £35,000 a year salary just as a fucking ballpark. That's 1.3 million people. That number seems wrong.
Yeah. It's either firing people, or in the positive case, it's, they have so much, because they're not taking minutes anymore, they have so much more time to do, their actual, job of, I don't know, being an actual social care worker, that they would provide so many more billions of care expressed in however many. They're talking about firing people, but that's the positive case, baby.
Because the thing about care is, right, it actually generates wealth constantly all the time. That's what it's for. Every one of those kids pays money for every minute of social care that they do. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right, but it gets even stranger. So, I had a quick look, because I was 45 billion sounds like an insanely, and especially if it's per year, sounds like an insanely huge number. So I had a quick look, and it's so the total expenditure from central government funding to council budgets, which is pretty much all of council budgets except for a few local taxes, is about 125 billion a year. So if 45 billion a year is savings, that's a third of every council budget, give or take, is now saved in efficiencies by AI. 1 in every £3. No, this is not happening.
They fire literally everyone, and then the AI just rings fucking contractors to fill potholes, and that's it. That's the only function. The only remaining function of local councils is to make sure the roads work.
Yes, externalizing all the costs. So yeah, that does make total sense. This is just the spending isn't technically done by the council. The spending is done by the AI, which is gonna send Vamos Pest to your council house, which has 1 million tons of mold in the walls, even though that's not what you asked for.
Well, I mean, this is also like, that's the other thing, right? I mean, I made this point earlier on Blue Sky. It's just like, what you're going to do, especially in the short term, is you're going to hand like a bunch of Labour councillors or like whatever party councillors in your local area who are, 9 times out of 10, the very worst people you will ever meet in your entire fucking life. You will hand them all like the box with the wizard in it and then say, well, this thing is now in charge, even though you don't understand it and can't reproduce the results because it's a large language model. This thing will talk to the people now, and whatever it spits out, how about you simply rubber stamp it?
Yeah, why don't we just give a bunch of petty tyrants the machine that kills jobs, or, well...
Yeah, or the machine that,
jobs.
Or the machine that interprets, fucking local care decisions. And then instead of, the councillors pretending to at least, like, there's a vestigial human input, the councillors is going, well, the wizard in the box told us to, eliminate all care provision.
Yeah.
We've just done that because wizard box.
The Wizard of Boz.
What's that quote? A machine can't be the thing to make decisions because the machine can't be held accountable. I mean that's... I'm sure it is actually a selling point to certainly this government.
Yeah, I mean the upshot of all this is, and this is the other thing I wanted to talk about, is there was a good piece in Politico by Tom Bristow called "Labour's AI Gold Rush Gets Stuck in the Mud," and essentially what I'll just read a little bit. The centre-left government's plan for economic growth, public service reform, and thus its electoral hopes rest on the country adopting AI. But its strategy of breathlessly bigging up cutting-edge AI and pursuing massive data center investments is not cutting through to voters, MPs fear. And spoiler alert, that's because they did a bunch of polling on like what the public thinks of AI slop. The most common experiences that the public has with AI are, in descending order, fraud, misinformation, and deepfakes. And the concern with how shit AI is went from 44% in 2023 to 59% in 2025. So,
do you know what? I've changed my mind. It's really good that they made all these tools incredibly public for any dickhead to use. Well done, guys.
Finally, Keir Starmer's managed to make a disapproval number for something other than himself go up.
I mean, confession time on my part, right? Like, the reason I was in the Statue City was because I was doing an event with an artist friend of mine who has been working with, some sort of AI stuff for over a decade. And something we did as a prompt was we asked ChatGPT to summarize our work as a sort of starting point for thinking about, how we relate to technology, and particularly this AI stuff, now that it's just like very obviously fascist, and now it's being very obviously like inserted into all parts of our lives, whether we ask for it or not. And really, the use case I got from it was like asking it to write, a short story that I might have written, which was terrible, like an article I might have written, which was kind of all right, and a summary of how I might talk about my own work, which was like reasonably good, which, made me just realize that, oh yeah, it's clearly had all of my work fed into it. And then I got bored, that was like, 5 minutes of just being at my friend's place in Skopje and being like, oh, I wonder what it thinks of this. And I was like, okay, I'm done with this now. So yeah, for the government to like bet the farm on something, a sort of glorified Niall and Eliza, is questionable, I think.
Yeah. The machine that eats the joy of doing things.
Yeah,
we love that.
Well, it's also like it's for important stuff. It's also like I can take the minutes, but the average person's like sort of interaction with AI is this level of fucking auto-generated slop by the AI bot that's taken over the customer service at your your bank or your fucking whatever.
Well, speak for yourself, Rob. I mean, I think it's great. I'd never heard of Kill the Boar before, and now I think it's brilliant. So,
I mean, fundamentally, the only inarguable use case for LLMs is something that no one will ever read, Like, just something that has to exist, but no one will ever really read it. Like a fucking email report. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of categorization of the usefulness of this shit. Like,
I still want to see all opinion columns automated. I want the whole lot automated. Like, so it's just bots
exactly.
talking to bots. Like,
who's
that'd
fucking
be much more fun.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like the whole purpose of opinion columns is to fill the fucking inches. I mean, like, I know it's more and more online today, but like, again, like, who's fucking reading opinions by fucking
us?
Any of these?
You are.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's just us. Yeah.
yeah, just us and a bunch of other like podcasts like who have to dredge through this shit to like eke out
to
some
fill the
kind of
minutes.
meager existence. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, imagine the savings if you just like no longer employ Giles Corran.
Yeah.
I mean, now that, yeah. This,
And also the money.
all upside.
There was one more good interesting bit in that Politico article, though. I'll just read it to you. The government is earmarking brownfield sites in the party's former industrial heartlands to host new data centers. The exact places it faces the fiercest challenge from reform. But the lack of local benefits they bring is creating further tension. In Northumberland, Labour MP Ian Lavery, whose constituency will host one of the biggest data centres in the country, said local residents see little benefits in terms of jobs or financial returns from hosting these essential facilities. It can't be right that tech firms...
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, we've said it, and I'm fairly sure that Trash Future said as well. It's like, once these data centers are up and running, there's like 2 local IT guys who have a job like sticking wires in the server racks, and then like 5 people as cleaners, and then another 10 as security guards, and that is it. It's not a job generator. It's not like a steel mill, like there's going to be 15 jobs and they all fucking suck. And like, of those 15, 13 of them can be done through a fucking outsourcing company. So why the fuck would you, hire anybody? It's just
Have
all
they
suck
considered
shit.
that maybe there'll be less water in the reservoir though? And
that's
can't
true.
be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know a guy who actually manages a data center, and like he is actually paid an astonishing amount of money. But the thing is, there are like, I think there's about 5 guys at his sort of level in the organization, and then there's a bunch of grunts who do all the actual like, flipping the switches, and like they are not paid anywhere near as much as he is. Like,
Yeah,
again, like this is one data center, and there's, I don't know, it sounds like there's maybe 20 or 30 guys there for one center. Like, it's, yeah, and even if you upscale this shit, like it's not like a exponential increase of engineers versus the amount of servers that you've got running in one of these places, because like the bigger the place, the more efficient it is, because you don't need as many fucking people. So
yeah, and like I'm willing to grant that like when you build these things, you need like, I don't know, a good amount of builders and some engineers and certainly a bunch of electricians who will probably get paid good money to like staple all the wires and
to do it.
So yeah, the government's AI plot, like 3 years down the line when like this fucking hub-free AI is just infesting every corner of your local council, and like you're just desperately trying to beg it to like, fucking do some rubbish collection or, sort out a planning permission for some small local business, and it just goes fucking haywire. In the meantime, you have no jobs from the big data center. I wonder whether or not this whole, everything must be AI is going to be as popular as Labour thinks it will be. And I think I have a reasonable idea of the answer to that particular question.
I mean, Labour have a certain track record on things being as popular as they think they're going to be. So, best prediction of future behaviour is past behaviour, right?
Any other party would be 20 data points ahead.
I'm adding James Ball right now.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I think you'll find that...
Oh, don't. Fucking hate that prick so much.
like,
yeah, so there was one...
My friend
Sorry, Juliet.
Hugh Lemmy compares him to Mr. Logic from the Viz cartoon. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so there's
you ever read
what...
you ever read the Mr. Logic strip where he goes to the fucking STD clinic and the doctor's like, let's see you John Thomason. I know no one of that nomenclature.
Yeah, so there's one more thing I wanted to bring up before we get to our main topic for this evening. It got like small reports in the edges of the papers, but like obviously didn't make the main page anywhere. Is that the government has confirmed that I think this week now it's going to sell its last remaining shares in Royal Bank of Scotland, and because it essentially sold
that's good news.
It really
is good news because bank shares only go up in value, don't they?
Well, they do now. Then that's why the government, started dumping these out much earlier. On the value of the sale, where the public purse, if you will, is going to realise a loss of over £10 billion.
Yeah, but it's fine. They're going to make it all back with the AI stuff. So
Yeah, that's true.
You got to spend money to make money. It's business 101.
You've got to print money to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you do
Rachel Reeves is coming to beat you to death.
Yeah. You learn about what the printing press is in Business 102. Unfortunately.
Yeah, so if you maybe weren't, around or following politics in the way back when, but like RBS was one of the major British, not victims because it was an active participant in the financial crash of 2008, and essentially
that's
needed
a good question. That are you a victim if you suffer a fucking terrible injury moments after saying "watch this"?
Yeah, so the bank needed a £45 billion bailout in 2008 because it had made an increasingly unhinged series of dog. Yeah,
that is 1 year's worth of council savings.
I know, so it's nothing.
Yeah, shaking my head. If only they'd had AI. If only.
So yeah, after 100% saving this fucking, idiot institution that should have just been gutted and sold for scrap essentially, but wasn't, the public will simply eat a £10 billion pound loss, and that's because these shares were managed by the Treasury, and the Treasury hates the idea of holding any fucking asset. They simply started selling tranches of these these shares. Under George Osborne, I think, already. And, when they were trading at a vast discount of the price when we bought them. So, we just started realizing losses straight off the bat.
Yeah,
it must be wild turning up to a job where you've only got one big button that says sell, sell, sell.
That's what you get for working in the prison service.
I mean, if there's one thing that we've learned from from Gareth Dennis, from literally anyone who knows anything about any of the things that physically exist in the world in this country, the buildings and the roads and stuff, the Treasury does not think they exist. There is zero value in anything that tangibly exists that you can put your hands on and say, I am touching a thing right now. Doesn't matter. Well, so long as the spreadsheet is happy, everything is good. But if I own an asset that isn't real, so I have to get rid of it, otherwise my tenuous semblance to reality is completely dissolved.
Well, you'd think so, Alistair, but according to a Treasury spokesperson quoted in Sky...
A Treasury report.
We now own less than 1% of the shares in NatWest, which is the same as RBS, which is a significant step towards returning the bank to private ownerships and delivering value for money for taxpayers. Except,
What do you mean?
Well...
Gotta fill those column inches.
Because, at one point, I think at the height of the financial crisis, the British state owned 80% of the shares in RBS or NatWest.
Uh-huh.
And we could have used those shares to run that bank as an arm's length public utility and provided a whole bunch of things that we won't get.
I'm getting nauseous just thinking about it.
So we could have done these things.
Icky public ownership.
Yeah, but instead we delivered value for money for taxpayers by not doing any of that and simply writing off £10 billion.
Yeah.
And more concerningly, why does returning it to private ownership do better for public funds.
Because private better, David.
Because, like, you know what I mean? Investors will then make a fucking fortune at the government's expense, and that's just good business.
Yeah, I don't mean to, like, you know, give people cause to tell me get tested, but Rob, why?
Well, I mean, I think the current RBS chairman was a bit more realistic when, you know, The Guardian asked him about all this. Because he simply said, well, the government was always expected...
Money, please!
Well, no, he said simply the government always expected to lose a lot of money on this bailout. Quote, I don't think they ever went into this as an investment. This was a rescue, and they did well as a result. I don't know who did well, but I assume he means the bank that I now run at a profit again.
Yeah, they,
terms
brackets
of
me.
In terms of rescues, this is probably ranked behind that submarine Elon Musk wanted to build for the fucking cave.
Yeah, there was one guy who did quite well out of all this, though. The previous CEO during the financial crisis, who I think you can genuinely, credibly, you know, as has been backed up in several books about RBS during the time of the financial crisis, an architect of the doom of this bank, Fred Goodwin, who you may remember as Fred the Shred once upon a time. And he did actually really well because his pension payouts, he still got like a massive pension from RBS, even though he genuinely like drove the bank into bankruptcy. And he started getting almost £350,000 a year after he left. But because that pension is inflation linked and price of share linked, it's almost worth £600,000 a year now. So, you know, for the low price of running a major British institution into the ground and requiring an £85 billion bailout, he's now getting paid £600,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it turns out if you're you know, one of the architects of the almost failure of capitalism, you do very well out of it.
Yeah.
Weird. Huh.
Yeah, so anyway, let us now turn to our main topic, and it's also one of the many reasons why Juliet's agreed to come back tonight, is I want to talk about football this evening. And one of the many reasons that Juliet's here is that she really loves watching the game of football, whereas I don't give a fuck about the game of football, but because I find the political economy of football and the Premier League interesting. So, like, we needed some backup of somebody who actually likes kicking a ball around and watching people do that.
Yeah, it's basically all I do, so, you know.
So yeah, before I say anything, a lot of what I'm about to say is based on really good reporting at Bloomberg by Ellen Milligan, Alex Wickham, and David Hellier. So, you know, credit where credit's due. The reason I got so interested in all of this is like a couple months ago, there was that whole scandal where Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and everybody else was getting like free football tickets, free box seats, free Taylor Swift tickets, you know, which is fine. But all these
for security reasons.
Yes, but a lot of those, like almost 90% of all those free tickets, came from the Football Association. Like they were the people who were giving out all this largesse for no particular reason whatsoever. Until a couple of weeks ago, there were a couple of small articles, and this is a bit from Bloomberg. The UK government is considering paring back the powers of its planned football regulator as part of a wider clampdown on bureaucracy. Prime Minister Starmer's office is reviewing
the other one. Fuck off. Clamp down on bureaucracy, and and you're trying to make it even more difficult to get hold of Pip. And I know they're saying that they've U-turned, but not really yet on fucking winter fuel allowance, introducing a fuckload of bureaucracy there. Yeah, fuck off.
Yeah, but I was about to ask how stupid do they think we are, but I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah,
they are praying we are stupider than they think we are.
But the answer, at least from the Prime Minister's office, was they wanted to ensure that this new regulator didn't, quote, stifle the growth of the Premier League or disincentivize overseas investment in Britain's biggest football clubs, according to people familiar with the matter. So I'm like, well, if Labour ministers and lots of MPs are getting like a lot of these football tickets, which in the scheme of things, in terms of the numbers we'll talk about this episode, is like, as usual, is nothing. It's like fucking, pennies on the pound, essentially. If they're getting all this and all of a sudden this regulator, is weakened, why was the regulator needed in the first place? And also, why doesn't Britain have one? Because literally every other country pretty much does have an independent football regulator with like more powers than the Football Association.
Mm.
So this is essentially that, that like what is it that like the Football Association and the major clubs hope to gain from watering down this football regulator? And to do that, you have to understand a little bit about the basics of the Football Association and the Premier League specifically, which is, the FA is the governing body of the Premier League. It's where the major clubs play. And it is, in comparison to every other European league, it has insane revenue.
I don't need to know what the offside rule is, do I?
No. God, no.
Good. Not yet. Quick historical note on the Premier League, though, is that it was formed in 1992 when 22 clubs who were in the top division at the time basically agreed to break away from the Football League, because if they were in the same organisation as the other 70 Football League clubs in the lower divisions, then they would have to negotiate collectively for TV rights and things like that. But by forming a breakaway league, they could do that separately and just sort of strike out deals for the bigger clubs. And that, of course, was when Rupert Murdoch bought the rights to the Premier League as well. Like Alan Sugar said to him, the Premier League will probably make your broadcasting network. Why don't you go for that? Sugar was chairman of Tottenham Hotspur at the time. So that's just a little sort of historical note on where the Premier League came from and the fact that it was set up, explicitly as this kind of revenue generator and this thing that basically would free the elite clubs from obligations to smaller ones.
Although it's funny that they then tried to do that again. Like, that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
With the European Super League, which will come back later in this story, because it is the exact same trick, essentially. So, but just to put it in perspective a little bit, these are some numbers from The Guardian. The Premier League club revenue in 2023 combined was about 7.1 billion euros, versus Germany's Bundesliga or Italy's La Liga, which is the same thing, just different countries. They each made
Italy
about
is Serie A, sorry.
Sorry?
La Liga is Spain. Italy is Serie A.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Spain's La Liga then. They each made about 3.7 billion euros in revenue. So the Premier League is like about double as valuable as every other major European league, even though like football in those countries is just as big, or maybe not even bigger in terms of like popularity, people who want to go to games, people who want to go, see the matches, all that stuff. The Premier League is the revenue is really fucking high. But weirdly enough, a lot of the clubs, except for like a handful, are always on the verge of going bust. And we'll get into why that is in a little bit. But the main source, as Juliet was like already alluding to, is broadcasting rights. The Premier League, and I think through the FA, owns the rights for TV channels to broadcast the games, and they sell those broadcasting rights either every year or every couple of years. And that is by far the biggest amount of income, essentially.
Yeah, and while we were still in the European Union, sort of competition rules meant that the FA had to sell the rights to football coverage to lots of different broadcasters rather than just one. The previous deal was that Sky Sports, obviously pay-per-view, got the live Premier League matches, and BBC with Match of the Day got the highlights. But now, of course, you have the situation where games are on sort of TNT, Amazon Prime, Sky Sports. So, whereas before you only had to pay for one subscription, now if you want to watch everything, you would have to pay for 3 or 4. Also important here is that the Champions League, the rights to broadcast the Champions League as well, so UEFA offer a similar model. And the Champions League, again, was set up in the early 90s explicitly to concentrate wealth and success in the hands of a small number of wealthy clubs after sort of teams like Juventus and Real Madrid got annoyed at seeing Steaua Bucharest or Red Star Belgrade become champions of Europe. And the way the Champions League is set up, the top 4 or 5 teams in the major European leagues in Spain, France, Italy, Germany, and England will qualify for the Champions League and receive a lot more revenue from television and from sponsorships, etc. So it's a way of, again, concentrating wealth in the hands of a small number of clubs, and it's the reason why you've got this stratified elite within the top division of English football, which itself is this stratified elite. And of course, it was all those clubs who wanted to join the Super League in 2021.
Yeah, so and within especially in the super stratified league, the main expenditure that comes from that all these clubs undergo is on players and wages specifically. Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, and Arsenal all have their football squads themselves have an annual salary bill of over €1 billion per annum. So that's just
is that
the
each?
salary. Yes, each.
Fucking Jesus.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely mad how much footballers get paid.
Yeah, I mean, to
and
give
that's
an example here, in 2012, I went to watch Norwich play Manchester City, and Manchester City were chasing the title. All the other centre forwards, they'd spent £30 million each on stop scoring, so they brought back an Argentinian striker called Carlos Tevez, brilliant player. But he'd been on strike for about 5 months because he was angry at being named as a substitute in a Champions League game. So he got paid £200,000 a week to play football, and he refused to do it for half a year because he just, had a insult to his ego. And then they brought him back in the team, having said they'd never pick him again. And he scored a hat-trick and did a sort of comedy celebration, referencing him being on strike. So yeah, that's kind of what top-level football is like.
This puts me in a very difficult position of wanting to, support striking workers, but also finding that to be atrocious behaviour.
Finally, we're going to cut the Gordian knot of our footballers working class.
Yes. But even those clubs, right? Like Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal, maybe not them, but most Premier League clubs all operate at a loss. And that's basically because they're constantly in this arms race against each other, specifically for the best players to whom they have to pay ever more money. And also for things like, we want to build a big stadium. They get into debt. They have to pay interest, all that stuff. And even when you have Gulf billionaire money, you will not be a profit-making club. You will simply there's just kind of an infinite well of money to prop you back up, but you're still not if that didn't exist, even more clubs would be in financial trouble.
I mean,
and
far be it from me, a simple non-football non-understander, but it sounds to me like if demand is infinite and supply is limited, then cost will increase somewhat.
Yeah, sure. I mean, sure, but this isn't new. This is an old phenomenon. But one of the sort of reasons that this really kicked off was in 2013 when Chelsea, which was then owned by Roman Abramovich, I think he's no longer allowed to own it because of
he got
sanctions after
in
Ukraine.
2022. Yeah.
Went sort of into this berserk competition with Manchester City, which is, and I think was and still is, part owned by Sheikh Mansour of the ruling family of the UAE. He's personally worth £17 billion, and his family's worth way more than that. So this is two men with infinite pockets essentially, and they just essentially went fucking crazy trying to buy the best players. And because of that...
To give you a little example here for colour, that season, 2013-14, Norwich was still in the Premier League. I went to watch us at Stamford Bridge play Chelsea. The 3 players that Chelsea brought on as substitutes cost them more than Norwich had spent in their entire history, going back to 1902. We drew 0-0.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, that's how wildly unequal it is.
Yeah. So as part of the reason of sort of to try to stop this, or not stop, but basically sort of tone down this insane arms race, the Premier League introduced lightly enforced rules to stop basically people attempting to buy championships. Like you can't,
Please stop spending infinite money, please.
Yeah, so they introduced like this is much stronger in enforce these spending caps in America, which is weird. Like the national American football, the NFL has really tight salary caps, and those are actually like quite sharply enforced. But in England, of course, the fines are so low, it's quite cheap to like buy your way out of it. Essentially, according to Bloomberg, Manchester City alone has like over 100 breaches of these like salary cap rules going back a decade, and like because they're so piddly, Manchester City just doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean there are points deductions where cases are relatively simple and can be proved. Like with Manchester City, there are 115 charges against them, which have been kind of at the stage of waiting to be processed for several years now, I think. And of course, because there's so many and they're all interlinked, has made it more difficult. But for example, like Nottingham Forest breached these rules. They're called profit and sustainability rules. Not this season, but the season before, and they got docked 4 points, I think. But they thought they would get far more points and win far more games and be far more successful long term if they just breached the rules and took the short term hit. And yeah, fair, Forest just about stayed up despite having 4 points taken off them last season, and then this season they finished 7th and they nearly made the Champions League. So the line of thinking is, the punishments for breaching the rules, are worth
so
taking.
low that it is worth taking a punt on losing 4 points in the standings if you can buy like the super friends that scored 10 goals instead.
Yeah, and of course it means that league positions are being decided as much in the courts now as on the pitch. I know we're going to come on to Everton in a bit, but I think they got like a 10-point deduction for the same thing.
I think so, yeah. I think that,
6. But yeah, this stuff is going to happen more and more, and it's obviously, unbelievably unsatisfying as a fan.
Yeah, and basically, so what's been happening over the years is it's not just in previous sort of iterations. It was Russian money, then it was Gulf money. But in the last few years, what's really exploded is American sports money has like flooded into the Premier League. I think as of next year, I think it's more than half the teams in the Premier League are either fully owned or like owned in substantial part by American financial backers.
People have been talking about all 92 league clubs being American owned. I mean, there's a Wikipedia page, like a list of owners of English league football clubs. So yeah, you can see that in the Premier League, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 10 of the 20 Premier League clubs at the moment are at least part American owned.
And like that is probably going to increase. And what you're now also seeing is not just like Premier League, it's now pushing down into the English Football League, and then like even lower than that. That Netflix show with Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham is one of the really famous ones, which I've never watched it. Like, as I understand it, those two are like football enthusiasts, but they have also bought this as a brand, and they are making a lot of money out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I personally find the Wrexham thing incredibly irritating. I don't really know any British people who watch it. And the thing is, so it's basically rich Americans buying another club just like anyone else, but the demand here is that you enjoy it and you feel good for them somehow. And, they're selling this very disingenuous narrative that Wrexham are like these underdogs that, are down on their luck and are being, brought through the leagues by, the good grace and benevolence of these incongruous sort of, multimillionaires who turn up in this like, deindustrialized like former mining town. But the show makes something like $400,000 an episode on Disney Plus, I think it is now. Which, if you throw that amount of money into non-league football,
fourth league
or
or
the
third
lower
league
divisions
team.
of the English Football League, you're going to fly up the leagues pretty quickly. I mean, there's actually today, there was quite an amusing story that in the documentary they finally addressed the fact that loads of other teams hate them and just call them like Disney FC, resent them, ludicrously financially doping their way through the leagues and saying, well, no, actually, we meet all these sustainability rules because of all the sponsorship deals we have and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you've only got the sponsorship deals because these guys own the club. So the whole thing is just completely disingenuous.
If I know anything at all about football, they call them worse than Disney FC.
Quite, yeah. I mean, that's what they would allow to be broadcast on the show, but yeah.
So a lot of these like investments in these football clubs are like they're twofold, right? So the first is people, especially now American money, thinks that they can, like, if they buy a club or part own a club and like stuff it full of money, buy the best possible players, then that team will go on to win many championships, and therefore then we will get our money back in terms of TV rights, merchandising, ticket prices, all that stuff. Like it becomes a commodified investment product but it is slightly more high risk than other things. So that's like strand one. The other strand is these are also like status symbols. They're toys. Very wealthy Americans if you are like a top tier wealthy billionaire American, what you really aspire to be is not the owner of a Premier League team, but you want to own an NFL franchise, American football, or you want to own a basketball team, or maybe a hockey team in like parts of that country that play hockey. But like those are all priced out. You cannot buy an American football team anymore. The sticker price on average to buy an American football team is $6 million, whereas the price to buy a Premier League team is just under $2 million. So like it is the rich man's toy, but on the cheap, if that makes sense at all.
Yankee go home.
And I mean, and look, previously to this, it was Russian money, and then it was Gulf money. So like none of this is new with Americans. It's just been slightly more turbocharged in the last few years because of American money flooding in.
Yeah, there was a period of Chinese money as well, and I think like Wolves, who are in the Premier League, still have Chinese owners. But the Chinese attempt at something like the Saudi Super League collapsed a few years ago, and the tendency for Chinese companies to buy English football teams basically ended up with Wigan Athletic being taken over twice in a year, and then the second owners just immediately put them into administration. So yeah, the sort of the Chinese takeover of English football has been cancelled, but yeah, the Americans and the Gulf states are very present. You won't find many of them at a Wigan Athletic game. I went recently, and it's one of the emptiest football grounds in the country. So yeah,
Christ.
This is an ad break on Podcasting as Praxis. This advert is for the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. On the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis, you will get at least 2 monthly bonus episodes of Podcasting as Praxis, where we discuss lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetising whale shit, and, reluctantly, Scott Paul. You will also be able to join the Podcasting as Praxis Discord, a place to talk with like-minded people about lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetising whale shit, but not Scott Paul, and also, of course, Podcasting as Praxis. If that isn't enough Podcasting as Praxis for you, the Discord also includes a bonus channel where we post the bits that don't make the final cut of the episodes. Fans of both mediocre and bad podcasting have everything to gain by subscribing to the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. You will also no longer get ads on episodes of Podcasting as Praxis. £5 a month will get you all of that and maybe more at patreon.com/you guessed it, PraxisCast. That's patreon.com/PraxisCast, the place where we sell Podcasting as Praxis.
So I wanted to sort of make all this slightly less abstract by talking about sort of maybe a slightly more, even within the Premier League, a slightly more extreme case, but it is, I think, illustrative of what happens when all this foreign money starts flowing in and starts changing the nature of these clubs. And I wanted to talk specifically about Everton FC. And then after that, I want to come back to the football regulator. a couple of owners ago, but where I wanted to start the story, this again from Bloomberg, was a guy called Fahad Moshiri. He was, quote unquote, a relatively unknown accountant until he began working with Russian billionaire Alisher Usmanov. So he owned the club, but, you know, he was just an accountant, but he worked for somebody else who did have like a shit ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, generally, as a rule, if you are an accountant, it is generally you remain unknown unless there are exceptional circumstances, I would like to think.
Yeah. And Usmanov is one of those guys who, like, during the post-Soviet privatization, like the Yeltsin years, like, made insane bank. You know, like, he's one of the original, like, Russian oligarchs. He's really of that world. But, of course, now, or, like, you know, since a few years, he's been sanctioned because of the war in Ukraine. And that, therefore, ended a lot of the corporate sponsors of Everton FC, which were all linked also to the owner, Usmanov, you know, not... whatever, like Usmanov was just pumping more money into this club by sponsoring them through his various companies, apart from his outright ownership. And although on paper, Fahad Moshiri remained like the actual owner-manager, and even though all these like sponsorships kept falling through, Moshiri still kept buying expensive players and also building a brand new stadium in Liverpool up to the tune of about $800 million, which is, I think they're moving in this week, Juliet, or last week. They've just moved into the new stadium.
They're moving
into the new grounds
for the start of next season. Yeah, I mean, actually, they have played one or two friendly matches there. But yeah, the official opening is start of next season.
Yeah. Also, I should say at this time when it was still... you know, quasi-owned by this Russian billionaire and practically owned by the accountant, even though they'd spent like a ton on fancy players, they still came very close to relegation, to dropping, because that's the thing with the Premier League that like part of the reason why they wanted to form the European Super League is in the Premier League, you can relegate, and if you relegate, your income from TV rights like drops like a fucking brick. So if you're a club that's not well resourced and you fall out of the Premier League, all of a sudden and very quickly you can either go bankrupt or like lose your main form of income. Or,
I mean,
like, a substantial chunk of same.
Everton are an interesting case here because unlike most of the other established Premier League clubs, they're the ones that have probably, on average, over the last kind of, well, even like 15 years or so, been most at danger of getting relegated. I mean, Manchester United and Tottenham, who wanted to be in this closed shop, like 15-16 team league, I think finished like 15th and 17th in the Premier League this season, but that's quite unusual. Whereas Everton are frequently kind of battling the drop, but all the other teams who are kind of around the relegation zone are quite used to being in and out of the Premier League and will budget for that. So yeah, Everton are a sort of interesting anomaly in this regard, right?
Yeah, well, far be it from me that an investor should have to experience a degree of risk to their investment. Like that just ain't right. That don't seem right with me at all.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't care if like this you know, this accountant frontman like goes bust. I don't care about that. But like for like a town and a fan community to lose the club because like some insane guy has like overspent on players, like. That's not too uncommon an occurrence, and like it's just really shit for like the people who, you know, live in these areas and, you know, have real like attachment to these like clubs who form the actual beating heart, you know?
It's pretty uncommon at the higher levels for a club to disappear entirely. I mean, I'm really amazed it doesn't happen much more often. You know, in my time, maybe 5 or 6 league clubs have gone bankrupt, like Aldershot and Maidstone in the early 90s. Bury in 2019. That might be it, actually. But obviously, what was more common in the 2000s in particular was
Hello Rangers.
Hello Rangers. Yes, that was very funny. I think it'd be good if just every time Rangers reformed and got back to the Scottish Premier League, they just like fucked them off back to the Lowland League again or something, and had to keep
back to the
abyss
back with you.
Yeah, it's an awful club, but. You know, in the English league, like it's quite rare for teams to go bankrupt entirely. But what happened a lot during the 2000s was clubs like wildly overspending and it all going tits up. Like Leeds United, quite famously, guy called Peter Ridsdale was the chairman, and They just spent wild amounts of money on players in an attempt to win the league and win the Champions League, and it didn't quite come off, and they ended up in the third division. And Portsmouth, famously as well, I think. At one point they had like 5 owners in 2 years, like one of whom might not have existed. One of them was the son of a guy called Arkady Gadamak, who was no longer allowed to own football clubs after being convicted of gun running during the Angolan Civil War.
Jesus Christ.
His 29-year-old son owned the club, and then like that went tits up as well. So they ended
up a cool
up
bunch of people that own football clubs, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean the FA have this thing, and the Football League have this thing called the fit and proper person test, which is just like a running joke because it's basically impossible to fail it. Famously, before the Emiratis came in, like Manchester City got bought by Thaksin Shinawatra, who was president of Thailand, and was one reason he bought the club was to give himself some immunity against like dozens of human rights charges, and he was just allowed to buy the club. And Manchester City's chief executive at the time was a guy called Gary Cook, and he was asked about how he felt about this person owning the club, and he just said, well, look, Thaksin's a great guy to play golf with. So that's the kind of mentality that people were working with, but it's also the mentality that a lot of fans work with. I mean, like Newcastle United got bought out by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. And I was at one of the first games after they got bought out, and there were just banners everywhere about how great, Mohammed bin Salman was and his people were, and all a lot of the fans cared about was that like money was going to come into the club and they might win something. And sadly, they have just won something. But
people just do not give a shit.
Not enough of them do.
Other than, just do not give a shit about anything other than like my club good, like. And it's always the sort of like the huge sort of disconnect between like the community around the club, the people who've like grown up in the area and support the team, they've supported their entire life, and like that's just they're sort of like fundamentally at the whims of like billionaires who really couldn't give a fuck about the team. Or it's like, you know what I mean? It's just all. It's the sort of the contrast between like the like sports as a fucking community thing and sports as a business thing.
Yeah, as an asset class. Yeah.
Yeah. But like a lot of people just they do not give a fuck. It's like, why bring politics into sport? You know what I mean? Like. Doesn't matter what kind of like war criminal or human rights violator like buys your club. You leave politics out of it. We're just here to enjoy the beautiful game.
Well, I mean, after Moshiri put Everton FC up for sale, or was forced to sell, I can't remember how that exactly came about. They were almost bought, but not quite, by a whole new class of person. Jamie, this was the Miami-based investor group called 777 Partners, which tried to buy the club last year, so in 2024. And this group have made its first fortune, and this is from the Financial Times, by investing in esoteric financial assets such as structured settlements. This includes offering lottery winners or car accident victims cash up front in exchange for handing them over the actual payments designed to pay regular income over many years, which at that time created a lot of excess cash, according to then CEO Josh Wander. So, just the...
Sound like another great bunch of guys. Great to play golf with. What's the golf like in Miami, anyway?
Well, they were
Trump
not like...
goes, isn't it?
Yeah. This was not like the first acquisition or planned acquisition of 77 Partners. They had gone on essentially sort of a mad buying spree of football clubs in Italy, Brazil, Germany, Belgium, France, Spain, and Australia, according to the Financial Times. And they wanted to now add another Premier League club to its roster, but because those other clubs they bought weren't quite so big, but a Premier League club does cause more attention, and specifically, the Financial Times started to look closely at them, and then, and this is from the Financial Times. The glare from association with one of the world's most watched sporting contests, the Premier League, meanwhile, has invited damaging scrutiny on the once obscure firm. Lawsuits are piling up from 7-7 creditors, chasing unpaid debts and airing allegations of fraud. So, what basically was happening...
If only they hadn't picked up their big stockbroker phone and said, invest in football.
Well, what they were trying to do, actually, by buying Everton FC was to, like, sort of... apart from reputation management, they were trying to hide a lot of their bad debts and, like, their increasingly unhinged business model in the assets that Everton does have, like the brand new stadium, the income from the Premier League, and like they would like try to sort of use the actual money incoming from Everton to like hide everything else falling to shit around it. And part of the reason like why they really wanted Everton FC is we briefly mentioned this before, is this new stadium that they're building on the North Docks in Liverpool. And that's because this stadium specifically is what also the city calls the centerpiece of North London's regeneration, by which they mean we are going to convert everything into expensive flats. And if you own the £800 million stadium and you own a bunch of the land around it upon which expensive flats are now built, you have a lot more money than just like Premier League income, basically.
Did you say North London there?
So
yeah,
I meant North Liverpool, yeah.
All right.
All apologies to the people of Liverpool.
Yeah.
I mean, this model is quite common now, even at quite low levels. I mean, I ended up going to see York City earlier this season, which meant having to go to York, which you should never do. But their stadium is kind of like out of town. It's got like a Hollywood Bowl and a multiplex cinema and a shopping centre kind of built into it. Reading's is kind of similar as well, and that's
does that
like
improve
no.
the sport?
The airportification of every cultural venue in the country continues apace.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's really the stadium was just awful. I mean, I really just hated watching football in it because it doesn't, like you said, Jamie, it doesn't feel like a community thing. It feels like something that's being integrated into just shopping or something. It's really depressing.
Well, I mean, sometimes you want to go and watch an Everton match and also buy an entire Le Creuset cookery range set. So,
which then won't let you take into the stadium.
There are those among us.
Well, look, I mean, the one thing I will say for York Stadium is that, like, one of the most tedious and frequent football chants you'll hear at the moment is that people going football in a library because the fans are too quiet. But like the York Stadium does actually have a library in it, which I think is. I do approve of that.
Yeah. How far out do you reckon we are from some investment group buying like a Premier League team and then just immediately fucking like destroying it? You know, like they do with like all businesses now, where you buy them, you just like sell everything off, saddle them with debt, and then run.
Well, that's kind of what the Glazers did with Man United. I mean, they didn't run, but
because that would be like a real fucking like peak scandal for Britain, I think. Like,
well, like I said earlier, you had the people buying Wigan Athletic and immediately put them into administration, which is
what
kind of
league were they in at the time, though?
They were in, I think, the second division. They might have been in the third.
Yeah, but like, imagine if someone just like, you know what I mean, bought and then immediately fucking dismantled like one of the big teams. The fucking like,
Toys R Us again.
Shuffled into a fucking Amazon warehouse.
Yeah, it'd be an absolute bloodbath, you know. Because the thing is though, it would force people to pay attention to how capital operates nowadays.
Yeah,
which is possibly why it hasn't happened yet. You know,
it wouldn't though. It would for people who supported that team, but everyone else would just go ha ha ha.
That's what I meant when I said it was going to be a bloodbath. Do you know what I mean? But but I think like
the footballification of football, you hate to see it.
The papers would absolutely kick off about it because like if it happens to one team, it can happen to like any team. Do you know what I mean? It's like once someone if there's not sufficient outcry about that happening the first time, then like, you know what I mean? It's going to happen again, isn't
Well,
it?
I mean,
but it does feel...
Maybe they're too big to fail, though.
they are too big to fail at the top levels, and the fans are used as insurance basically against a thing like this happening. The assumption that the fans will kick off if an owner just obviously like runs the club into the ground to line their own pockets. I mean, actually, one of the first football matches I ever went to was a Norwich game in 1996, where there was like a sit-down protest against the chairman, who was like a Tory councillor, I think. Called Robert Chase, and he was perceived to have done exactly this. He's dead now, so I can say what I like about him. There was a fun moment. He died, I think, 2023, and they had a tribute to him at the game, and they decided to have a minute's applause for him because there was no way they could get away with a minute's silence, even nearly 30 years after he left the club. And there was a sort of very awkward, oddly observed applause for Robert Chase. Yeah. But like people were like throwing sort of projectiles, objects at the police. It was like pretty intense, and that's a sort of fairly placid club with no reputation for any kind of hooliganism. So the clubs will use the fans for that, but will also dick, partly through television, will just dick the fans around no end with like awkward kickoff times and exorbitant ticket prices and exorbitant food and drink prices and exorbitant like merch prices and all the rest of it.
I mean, I used to love that Twitter account that posted like food from
Footy Scram.
Oh yeah, the Footy Scram. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, some of that was absolutely savage. Like, but I can't remember which like fucking club it was, but I remember in the 90s hearing about a game where like fucking the fans just refused to leave at the end of because their fucking club was being mismanaged, so they just refused to leave at the end of the game, and they were sitting chanting, "We're not going till you sack the board."
That could have been a lot of clubs. Yeah, I'm not sure who that was actually.
But I think part of the current push, and I think it's there sort of very much along the lines of like you go to York FC and also buy some nice homeware while you're there and a new pair of jeans. Is like the idea is again it's much more like it's American. It's like to say yes, you can still be. Like you could still be like a hardcore supporter of Everton or Norwich or Man City or whatever the fuck, but at the same time, it's to take these people and transform them into consumers of the football. Yeah, which has already happened with like the merchandise and stuff, but like to sort of push that along further, and I think that's like the current strategy is to fully consumerize, make it like instead of what. Again, I haven't been to a live game in fucking years, but like what used to be a really intense experience on the stands sometimes is like something that like you can, that the scared suburban dad can do with his kids on Saturday and have like a sort of nice regulated Disney-fied experience, and then also buy some jeans on the way back.
Yeah, it's the same with the food as well. Like, can you still get a pie in Bovril?
At football, yeah, you can.
Is that universal?
Pretty much.
Have we gentrified football food?
I mean, they've sort of.
I know that you can absolutely get like some shit that I would not associate with going to the football.
Yeah, I mean, there's more options at some of the bigger clubs, but yeah, if you want like a pie or a burger or a hot dog, yeah, absolutely, you can still get that. So, two things in response to that. One is that some of the bigger English clubs recently have been talking about getting rid of season tickets.
Oh my god!
Because they want to, rather than have the same fans who turn up. I mean, again, I'll use myself as an example. I've had a season ticket at Norwich since 2011, and so I've got all the branded Norwich City tat that I need. My friends and I will go to the pub for a game, and we'll show up at like 5 to 3. I won't buy any food or drink in the stadium. Because you're not actually allowed to drink within sight of the pitch anyway, as a holdover from the 80s sort of anti-hooliganism rules. So I won't spend any money in the stadium at all, and like the second the game leaves, I'll go back to the pub. And the bigger clubs think, well, look, we've got huge numbers of supporters from all over the world who will travel to come and see us like once a season maybe, or maybe even once or twice in a lifetime. And, if they do that, it'll be a much more special occasion for them. So they'll do the stadium tour, they'll come to the club shop. They'll spend longer in the city. They'll want to like meet and greet the players, and we can use that to further build our support base abroad. And I guess that links into a wider point that there's there's a kind of colonialist model here, right? Which is that a lot of the clubs have built up huge support in target markets in other countries. So, this will manifest in things like, I don't know, Tottenham flying to Australia the day after the end of the Premier League season to play some sort of quite prestigious pre-season friendly matches there. Manchester United playing Wrexham in the US because both clubs are US owned. Clubs going to Malaysia or the Middle East or whatever, and then complaining that they have to play too many games, by which they mean we don't want to have to play cup games against these little teams because it's not very profitable for us. But, so that model that you're talking about of sort of gentrifying the experience and encouraging people to think of themselves more as consumers is something that's been developed in other countries to which Premier League football has been sold. And indeed, I can't go anywhere in the world now without seeing, a Chelsea shirt or a Liverpool shirt or a Manchester City shirt or something. And of course, now they're trying to export that model back or import that model back into England.
Yeah. I mean, I think the gentrification thing has been going for us almost as long as I can remember, because in the 80s it was the image. I mean, I was only a kid, but the impression I got was that people thought every match you would would there be a riot, you know what I mean? It was just
in the 90s when I was growing up in Holland, some of the bigger clubs would their hooligans would organize fucking pitched battles on the side of having a match.
Yeah.
It was
I mean,
I know, but I mean the 80s they put a fence around every pitch to keep the fans off the pitch.
They didn't do that everywhere, but that was what led to Hillsborough.
But that was it was a huge thing, and then they had that fire
Bradford City,
exactly
where they didn't have the fences because there would have been hundreds dead if they had.
Yeah, but then since they reduced the hooliganism problem by the 90s or so, the impression I got from it, because like I say, I've never had an interest in football. It clashes with my autism, but my whole family is obsessed with it, and everyone around here is obsessed with it. And the impression I got from the 90s onwards was that it was much more family friendly now, but God, it was getting expensive. Do you know what I mean? It was season tickets just kept going up and up. And what I've always thought is that they're just trying to price the the undesirables out.
That's exactly what happened.
Because the thing people love about football is you go there and you're part of the crowd and you you know what I mean. You do the chants and it's it's a community thing. You feel part of a crowd. You belong there. You're all cheering for the same thing. You have shared values and so on. And Capital fucking despises that. You know what I mean? What they would be much happier with a crowd of thousands of individuals who just sat there and politely applauded at goals rather than, you know what I mean, sang songs and that. But and if they'll turn up early and spend all their money on site rather than rolling in from a pub, all the better, But it's the ongoing gentrification of every aspect of life and culture.
Yeah, well, in that sense, Jamie, have good news for you and good news for supporters of Everton FC. The bid in the end from this weird 7-7 group based out of Miami failed, but they did get a new owner, also from the US in the end. He's a billionaire called Dan Friedkin, and how did he make his money? You ask. Well, he inherited Gulf States Toyota from his father, which is one of the world's biggest distributors of Toyota vehicles and parts. Mainly across the southern US. So he's, the son of a billionaire with this massive empire that imports cars from Japan. And he just wants, he's got a new toy.
Imports cars from Japan is kind of tame compared to what I was
that's true.
For when you said he was an American billionaire. You know what I mean?
But
think of the size of those fucking Toyotas though. How many people have been killed? There you go.
True.
I mean, look,
the tariffs just fucked his business now.
I was expecting him to be CEO of the Child Mine Institute or something like that.
There is a club in the Football League who are basically owned by the CEO of the Child Mine Institute, but for legal reasons, I won't name them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this makes it...
Stop recording.
Yellows United.
I don't know if this makes it better or worse for you, Jamie, but this guy, Dan Friedkin, does have a co-producer credit on Killers of the Flower Moon. And weirdly enough, is the producer on Parasite, the Korean movie that won the Oscar.
All right.
So...
Well, I hope someone's explained it to him.
But yeah, according to the Financial Times, this guy or his company called imaginatively the Friedkin Group is also into golf courses, luxury resorts, and owns a safari company in Tanzania. Oh, and he also already owns AS Roma.
Fucking job.
Yeah. This new owner, though, Friedkin, he has already mentioned briefly to the government that they would very much like the government to co-invest in uplifting the area around the new stadium, with Homes England already committing 56 million to, building expensive new flats. But now Friedkin and pals are asking for more government money to build public transport links, so, people can access the stadium, but also so the area can be much more expensive. He could sell those flats for even more money.
Mm-hmm. And that's just going to be what money goes to first bus or something.
Well,
it's
it's
not
like
they're going to build fucking rail or trams or some shit.
It's like even if they do build the rail and the trams, part of the point of that is, but only part of the point is to genuinely ferry people from the train station to the football game and back. But the much bigger prize is that all that area around it where they build the expensive flats can now be priced even higher because they have good transport links to the train stations.
Yeah, it's really good when you send all the gentrification out, but it's really worrying when the gentrification returns to the imperial core.
Yeah. Well, yes. So anyway, having sort of illustrated what's going on, broadly speaking, in the although like Everton really is like sort of a high point essentially in terms of like shenanigans with Premier League clubs. So returning back to this original question, like why then why do we need a football regulator apart from literally everything we were just discussing? So what the government is currently trying to water down is a proposed bill. It's called the Football Governance Bill. The Tories tried to pass it. It sort of, they didn't manage it with everything else that was going on, but Labour has reintroduced it. And the idea,
yep.
Yeah, and no, I mean this was one of those very rare ones that, like, in its original form, was essentially based a lot on like a big review of football shenanigans and regulation issues that was very informed by a big sort of fan-led review by someone in the House of Lords. I can't remember who. And a lot of the ideas.
I assume Labour was binning that bit off. Yeah.
No, it was a Tory, and it was actually, from what I've read about it, like in its original form, proposals that came out of that were not bad.
Yeah, I know, but there's no way Labour are going to fucking touch that with a barge pole, is there? Not
well, exactly.
Form.
So
well, that's why they got all those free tickets.
It literally. I mean, I can't. Allegedly, probably yes. Let's say it that way. So the original idea behind.
Let's just leave it up to your imagination.
All right. So the original idea behind this new law, the Football Governance Bill, is to create this new football regulator, which is independent from the government and, much more importantly, the clubs. Because at the moment, the Football Association is run by the clubs, so the inmates are running the asylum, essentially. And this new regulator would also be given powers to intervene and make financial arrangements between, and this is a key point, the different football leagues in the UK. Because basically, the amount of money that the Premier League brings in funds a lot of the lower leagues and the lower league clubs, like the English Football League, which doesn't have big sponsors, like as big sponsors or as big TV revenues, and like lower down the chain. Like there's just an agreement that I think it's like 10% or 50% of the money the Premier League makes flows down the pyramid to all these other clubs that don't have all this big money, unless like Ryan Reynolds literally buys in.
Yeah, and that had to be introduced because in the 90s, the sort of bigger teams, again, usually they would buy sort of young players when they played a couple of seasons or a season or two or something of professional, adult football. And there's numerous examples of big name players starting their careers at smaller clubs, I don't know, like Kevin Keegan at Scunthorpe United or whatever, before getting these big moves to bigger clubs that would be a strong source of revenue for smaller teams. And coming into the 90s, the bigger teams started scouting players while they were in youth systems, and so picking them up much cheaper or for free because of laws around paying transfer fees for school kids. Again, I'm going to use my club as an example because it's the one I know the best, but Norwich had a teenage player called Callum Manariuk in the late 90s who was deemed to be quite promising. Ended up not really having much of a career, but basically Manchester United scouted him at the age of, I think, 14. And there was a rule that any youth team player contracted to a professional club had to live within 90 minutes travel time. So to get around this, Manchester United flew this guy by helicopter every day from Norfolk to Manchester.
Jesus Christ.
So the FA said, right, new rule, 90 minutes by road. But, this was sort of a way in which clubs would find a way around these sorts of laws. And I think, one of the reasons why the regulator was deemed necessary is to deal with, people who would fit the letter of a law like that, but obviously, just drive a horse and cart through the spirit of it.
Yeah,
and take your bud action.
And one of the reasons that like Labour reintroduced this football governance bill, because I think starting in the middle of last year, this deal between the Premier League and specifically the English League, the second division, had run out. And the English League said, well, we need to renegotiate a new deal because we are dependent financially on the support from the Premier League. And the Premier League said, yeah, but if we simply don't do that, because that means 10% more money for us. And given how many clubs are close to bankruptcy, even within the Premier League, that might become like an important thing, essentially. So what Labour did was essentially, by reintroducing this legislation, was threaten the Premier League with this new regulator that say, well, if you don't get your shit together, pay the English League what they're asking or even a bit more, sustain the rest of what's known as the football pyramid, like the Premier League at the top, which makes the most money, and then everything else flows down from there. And so this is from an interview from, I think, last year on the BBC. She's talking about this fight between, the money about this fight over money between the Premier League and the English Football League. This is, I think she's still Culture and Sports Secretary. This is Lucy Fraser MP. We don't want this to be an issue for the regulators, said Fraser. It is clear football should resolve the issues for football. It is in the interest of the Premier League and the English League to come up with a deal, but it is clear if they do not, the regulator will. It was simply saying, if you don't get your shit together, we will introduce this thing. And this is like the main sort of financial sticking point. Like this is the money question, right? But also the new regulator, at least as was proposed last year before Labour started watering the whole thing down, would, among other things, stop English clubs from joining closed league like that. You remember 2 years or 3 years ago, the European Super League? That everybody got genuinely super fucking mad over?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever... I mean, not that I follow football very closely, but, just unanimous, it seemed to me, revulsion at this idea from pretty much every football fan, I think. It's fair to say.
Yeah. Everybody disliked that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was, and, I think, Juliet, correct me if I'm wrong, but, the idea was to do what the Premier League had done to English football, which was to take the top clubs and separate themselves off, is to say, what if we did that again, but at a European level? So we would only have Manchester City, Arsenal, the top three clubs from Germany, Italy, Spain, and maybe Holland and France as well. And what if they just had their own super special league, and we made even more money off that?
Yeah, and it would be a closed shop as well, was the other big sticking point for a lot of people. And, as I said earlier, there was very little merit involved. And so, Manchester United and Tottenham, for example, would have been part of that league. And, Tottenham finished 17th in the Premier League this season. So not even in the best 16 clubs in England.
Yeah. So, and then among other things, which is the things that I think also really matter to fans, and also you supporting Norwich, it would really introduce a much more like a stringent fit and proper test for new owners. So like you would have like less levels of atrocious financial chicanery that you have in like lower level clubs. I think another famous one is like Bury and Macclesfield going bust. The law would also...
Notts County are another interesting one here because they're the oldest club in the league. They're the oldest league club in the world. They're frequently a target for people who want to sort of buy some prestige, and they got bought in again in the late 2000s by a convicted fraudster who I think Sven-Göran Eriksson turned up there at one point, and it turned out he got scammed. And Eriksson, God rest his soul, would just make no secret of the fact that he was just about the money.
Even I briefly remember this.
Who played one match for them and then left because it was obvious something was very wrong. Fit and proper person test would hopefully, a better fit and proper person test would hopefully stop some of that stuff happening. But I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah, and I mean, like and also like this new law would demand that like not just a fit and proper person test, but also it would demand that every club show to this new regulator that it has like an actually like financially sustainable business model. Based on the premise that if you buy a Premier League club or an English Football League club or third or fourth division club, that you see yourself as a custodian of a club and of a tradition and of a fan base, rather than just being like a fucking vulture capitalist. I mean, I don't know how precise and harsh it would be in detail, but that was at least the spirit of the spirit of this thing. Because the last thing, which I think is like sort of indicative of the direction that they want or wanted, because I don't quite know what's all gotten watered down at this point, was to say, well, we're also going to give like fans the power to stop owners changing the club name, changing the club badges, or like the primary colors on the kits. So like they can't just cycle through all the colors over 3 years to make you buy new kit every season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is introduced specifically because of the case of Cardiff City, who are owned by a Malaysian businessman called Vincent Tan, and Cardiff like playing blue. He wanted to change the colour to red. In fact, he did do it. To make them like the Welsh club, and then market them abroad as the Welsh club. And obviously, the fans all hated it. And I think he redesigned the badge accordingly as well. And yeah, the fans were just like, "Look, fuck off! Just don't do that." There's no reason why really like clubs shouldn't change the colours of their kit, and there are like historical examples of it: Leeds, Crystal Palace, a few others. But yeah, the Cardiff case is a particularly sort of brazen example of it being done by like an owner for very cynical kind of corporate reasons that I think a lot of the fans felt just kind of cheapened the club, and I agree with them.
Yeah, so like that's part of the reason. Like the main thing is this money transfer business between the Premier League and the other leagues, but the other reasons is all this like, which I think is a genuinely like a real, to a lot of people, an important question is like, who owns these clubs? If I'm a fan, can I still go to the games on a relatively affordable ticket and enjoy the game as a fan, or am I now a customer of this club? And should I buy some new lovely Le Crusoe kitchenware whilst I'm heading there and back? Like it's fundamentally it's also about the structure of communities and how people relate to this and who gets to go and all that stuff. But on the other hand, and this has been the lobbying pitch against it, is this is from Bloomberg again. The Prime Minister's office is particularly concerned that certain elements of this proposed legislation, which is being overseen by Lisa Nandy's Department for Culture, Media and Sports — Lisa Nandy is maybe on her way out the door, if you remember — could dissuade foreign owners from buying football clubs, which in turn would restrict growth in the sector. Growth. So like, I mean, there's a bunch more words, but like basically the main thing from the government side is, what if we don't have more like American fucking, billionaire in, Nepo kids who want to buy a club because, they want one to go along with their Tanzanian safari company. And also, the group of Premier League owners is shockingly against, introducing a regulator with actual powers. This is a bit from Bloomberg. Crystal Palace chair Steve Parish told an industry audience at the FT Football Summit that the government had already put English football into a complete paralysis in expectation what new rules might be imposed. Chelsea part owner Todd Boehly, I don't know how you pronounce that, I don't care, taught the same conference...
Probably not like that.
Taught the same conference that it was hard to appreciate the need for a regulator, which, that sounds very much like banks saying, well, why do we need a regulator? We're perfectly capable of managing our own affairs.
Yeah,
I'll leave the last word.
Probably the most egregiously badly managed club in the Premier League at the moment. Astonishing number of players contracted to them that they can't play, and really kind of scattergun transfer and managerial policy. Chelsea are appallingly run.
I'll leave the last word in all of this to Jim Radcliffe, who's the part owner of Manchester United, a billionaire, and also tax resident in Monaco, who did, turn up in Bloomberg to give some important advice to the Prime Minister, I assume. His advice to the Premier League on trying out even more rules, he said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I would argue, I think this
okay then.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's good advice. Yep.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Cool.
I mean, it's not broken for Jim Radcliffe.
Lord bearing if.
Yeah.
It works very well for Jim Radcliffe. I'll give him that. But for
Jim
everybody
Ratcliffe
else...
was in the news this week because he couldn't be bothered to go and watch Manchester United women at the cup final at Wembley, which they also made last season. He didn't bother going there neither. So you see the sort of level of interest he has in the club.
Yeah. I mean, I think this legislation's probably doomed because if there's one thing that, fucking... Do you know what I mean? What do we call them? Are we calling them new Labour or Neo Labour or fucking?
I've always been calling it New Labour, NU Labour.
Yeah, right. Okay, right. So
yeah.
But one thing they have in common with New Labour is they just fucking hate Britain. Do you know what I mean? It's just fundamentally uncool. What we need to do is appeal more to the Americans.
Yeah,
Tony Blair was all about that. Tony Blair was never happier than when he was stood behind George Bush.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah, I don't know. For me,
it's the one other political idea that they have other than stomping on the left, isn't it? Just rank Atlanticism.
Yeah,
and I mean, for me, it's part of the if you look about where we began, which is Keir Starmer gets a bunch of free seats at corporate boxes, courtesy of the Football Association. It's everybody falls over themselves, and quite rightly, in saying, well, why are you getting this? But to then, as I've tried at least to sort of dig it out properly and say, no, for a Premier League, where that's worth at least $7 billion a year, a couple of football tickets to these people who are so cheap doesn't matter at all. And it's much more than just whether or not, I don't know, fucking Bridget Phillipson gets to see Taylor Swift for free. It's about these very big structural changes that underpin society. And it's not... I haven't seen a lot of reporting in full. I've seen a lot of facets very well discussed by the BBC, Bloomberg, by the Financial Times, by all these people upon whose work I've leaned. But what I've tried to do is sort of bring it together and say, look, these things that just appear shitty and are shitty on their face are they're part of this much bigger thing that does transform the way that... I mean, I don't give a fuck about football. I don't watch it, but it is important to so many people and communities and all this bigger stuff.
Yeah, and I would say that, a big problem here, I mean, obviously it's a theme of the podcast, it's a theme of a lot of what I talk about is, just the appalling state of the British public sphere. But sports journalism has really been a sort of a leader in this, because sports journalism, has always been very access driven, and nobody will criticize the owners of clubs or managers or players for working with bad owners to too much of an extent for fear of losing access. I mean, there was an interesting sort of moment around the 2022 World Cup because, you really, with Russia in 2018, then Qatar in 2022, you really couldn't escape the fact that these two tournaments had just been awarded by FIFA, who, are an episode in themselves.
Several, I think, yeah.
These despotic regimes, purely for, sort of illicit or cynical or financial purposes. And, you know, obviously Alan Shearer was on the BBC, and, you know, he's a big Newcastle fan, played for Newcastle for years. And they were sort of awkwardly asking him a bit about the Saudi takeover. But, you know, you could watch, like, Manchester City for years and years and years and hear all of the commentators talking about, you know, how wonderful the football was and, you know, what a tactical mastermind Pep Guardiola is and all of this, without them really talking about how much money they'd spent and the sort of disparity against the teams they were beating, let alone any kind of serious thought about where that money was coming from. And again, you see this with other things. I mean, you know, there were allegations against Cristiano Ronaldo that, you know, again, he carried on playing while those were being publicly raised, and commentators just would not mention it. It was just this massive like elephant in the room because, again, you know, the Cristiano Ronaldo brand, you know, as the most preening narcissist ever to play professional football. It's very, very big. And, you know, this is a real problem. Like, you get very little kind of joined up thinking about this, even in the sort of better and more classy end of football reporting, because publications, broadcasters don't want to lose access. And increasingly, they also don't want to have loads of fans of, you know, Newcastle or Manchester City or Chelsea or whatever saying, oh, you're biased against our club. So, you know, as with a lot of things in British politics, like a lot of the structural problems here are enabled by the fact that we just don't really have properly functioning media.
Yeah.
It's,
no, 100%.
It's that and the ownership as well, isn't it? Yeah. Like, the key thing missing from football is proper community level, fan level ownership of these clubs.
Yeah, and
which is realistically what should happen.
You have a handful of clubs lower down the leagues that are, I think, Luton, Exeter City, there's one or two others who are at least part fan owned. I mean, often what happens is, like, fan ownership in England will be a last resort. I mean, I talked about Portsmouth earlier, going through like a cycle of increasingly dubious and or fictional owners in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And then as a last resort, they were fan owned, and the fans voted to sell, I think possibly to people from Disney originally. And Wrexham, again, you know, Wrexham were fan owned when they were in the National League, which is the highest non-league division. And again, they voted to sell up to the Always Sunny in Philadelphia guys after they hit upon Wrexham as the best foundation for their Hollywood narrative. So fan ownership here is certainly not mandated, and it's sort of comparatively rare, and it's even rarer for a club to be protective about being fan owned. The obvious exception is AFC Wimbledon, who were formed in 2002 in response to the old Wimbledon, who were in the top division in the 80s and 90s, being just relocated to Milton Keynes, which has been a spectacular failure. Again, very American-style move. But the old Wimbledon used to get very low crowds. If you look at the top 10 lowest ever Premier League attendances, I think they're all Wimbledon home matches, which are being played at Selhurst Park, which they were sharing Crystal Palace. So they got just up to move to Milton Keynes. There was talk of them moving to Dublin at one point, and they were told, no, you're not allowed to do that because it's a separate federation. But
no, but it's very American because, like, that's, you know, in America, they just fucking take whole football clubs and just uproot them if, like, if a different city across the country just, like, offers a better deal. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think in England, that doesn't really happen so much because there aren't many places that might be viable, and Milton Keynes is pretty much the only big city that didn't have any kind of big sporting culture. I mean, there's some other big cities like Wakefield or Warrington, but they're rugby places, you know, whereas Milton Keynes didn't really have anything. And it's been a spectacular failure. I mean, AFC Wimbledon flew up the leagues with these huge crowds and lots of kind of enthusiasm and goodwill. And AFC Wimbledon just got promoted from the 4th division this weekend, and Milton Keynes might well slip out of the league entirely. They're pretty close to doing that. So even on its own terms, the Milton Keynes project, which is supposed to bring like Premier League football to this you know, up and coming city, has just been a complete disaster. And really, that's the only thing that thwarts a lot of what we've been talking about, is just, you know, the fact that football being a sort of competitive industry means that not everyone can be successful, and not every, you know, kind of horrible, cynical master plan works. And, you know, for every for every Wrexham or for every Chelsea or Newcastle. You know, there's quite a lot of other clubs who get taken over by quite cynical overseas investors looking for an asset who just realise that it's just not really that. All of this just reminds me of that old joke, like, how do you make a small fortune out of a football club? And it start with a large.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty. Like, that's a pretty good point to leave it on. You know, but before, you know, Juliet, we let you go. Obviously, we do have to do a round of comment or commentariat, which, you know, I don't know, Jamie, if I'm cutting like the grass in front of your feet, but it is getting increasingly hard to find things that are fun and not just like insane racism or, you know, transphobia, which I'm sure is a good sign for the UK.
Yeah, if you want to cause the fucking nation to fall into like ruin and chaos, Juliet, just travel across the channel on a small boat. The papers will catch fire. Anyway, those class warriors may be cheering the scrapping of non-dom status for rich foreigners living here, but these are the very people who spend a fortune in this country sustaining countless jobs in industries such as hospitality. Is that comment
Jesus
or commentariat?
Christ, shut the fuck up.
Commentariat Jim Ratcliffe.
We read a whole article about this woman, the non-dom, who was saying like, yeah, I put my children up in an expensive hotel. And like, no, these people fucking suck. It's commentariat.
Oh god, that one.
That was, well, my notes say that was Dick Chard Shittlejohn from the Daily Mail. His column was titled, "I'm a cunt and should be bricked up in an abandoned sewer like the pharaohs of old."
Interesting title the editor's gone with there.
Yeah, I was sub-editing him that week.
Right.
That column, he was having a fucking party because apparently the EU put out like official photos of Keir Starmer meeting some dipshits on the continent, and they put his name on it as Rodney Starmer.
Okay.
Rather than Keir, and so
we were insulting the great nation of Britain and so on and so forth. Or
no. He thinks it was fucking great.
Were there loads of
he hurts.
Were there loads of Only Fools and Horses references as a result?
There were, yes. He called them plonker and everything, yeah.
Oh, man. And then he fell through the bar.
Yeah.
But I wish he would.
For your information, Argentina, there's a battalion of Gurkhas stationed at the Falklands garrison at the moment. Please don't upset them. Is that comment or comment?
Oh my fucking
comment.
god.
Comment.
Shut up.
Comment.
Yeah,
comment.
I think that's comment.
Comment.
Yeah, that was a comment in the Express. Falkland Islands fears erupt as Argentina issues triumphant message over Chagos surrender.
I mean, we talked about the Chagos Islands on the previous. Just see previous episodes for like my just boredom with this shit.
Oh, it was the worst. It's the worst betrayal in British history. Don't you know?
All right.
A lot of the comments about that were like, you know, about how disgraceful it was that the fucking Chagos Islanders got their country sold, like their homeland sold out from under them, and it's like, is that what happened? Really?
Yeah, I think the horse may have already bolted on that one.
Yeah. Future generations will also be more accustomed to machines. Many young adults already prefer video games to real-world socializing and on-screen pornography to sex. I believe humans will always matter, but we should temper our hopefulness about the future with a little realism. Don't unthinkingly overrate the attraction of the human. Is that comment or commentariat?
Commentariat Jordan Peterson.
No, it's not enough sobbing and crying, but it is commentariat.
What do you mean, not enough sobbing and crying? I can sob and cry on demand.
Actually, since you brought him up, we should mention how fucking battered he got in that debate.
Yeah, by fucking 17-year-old, like, online atheists.
Where he forgot which side of the debate he was on. That was amazing, that, like. They had to change the name of the video from one Christian versus 20 atheists to Whippy Kermit versus 20 atheists. Because like halfway through, he, the representative of Christianity, denied being a Christian. It was so good. perfect debate technique. Like, because the guy asked him a question about Catholic dogma, and he immediately knew he was out of his depth, and just like, what? No, I'm not here to debate people about Christianity. What are you talking about? Like, might as well have just yelled "smoke bomb" and run off. It was fucking genius. Anyway, back to this dipshit. Who do we think this
commentary at Morgan McSweeney.
I'm gonna say comment just to be antagonistic.
Commentary.
Yeah, that was James Marriott in the Times. Let's be real. Some people
fuck
prefer
off.
the artificial.
Is he a real boy now?
His
What happened?
fucking
No.
face, man. Like,
All right, last one.
oh,
Free dress, free speech. That we do not get in this country. Is that comment or commentary?
comment.
Oh, is this Brendan O'Neill? It's commentary. I feel it's got the ode of Brendan about it.
I'm going to say comment.
Yeah, I'm going to comment.
That was a comment in the Express. Calls for Labour Mayor to be sacked because he dressed up as Adolf Hitler.
Well, who amongst us?
I know. But yeah, that's like, what about our right to free dress as Adolf Hitler?
who wrote the article?
It was just a news article because that was just. Yeah. Apparently, it's like the greatest travesty that, like, fucking. It's either the greatest travesty that's ever happened that would, in this supposedly free nation, we're not allowed to dress as Adolf Hitler, or it's like so good to finally see Labour like taking the brunt of, like, you know, the being punished for dressing as Adolf Hitler after so many years of, like, the woke left screaming about the Tories dressing as Adolf Hitler or some shit. Like. But there you go. Those are the only 4 paragraphs in all of British newspapers today that weren't about, like, fucking racism. So I hope you enjoyed.
Deep joy.
Yeah. And if people want to
joy.
enjoy, like, you know, on a much more genuine level, an actual level of enjoyment, if people would like to enjoy more things Juliet in their lives, such as a review of all the best sculptures in Skopje.
Oh, well, that's coming, yeah. You can go to julietjakes.com and you can listen to the left-wing football podcast I do with comrade Tom Williams called Pro Revolution Soccer. And you can find that on Patreon,
Nice.
which you can subscribe to, and SoundCloud, and, you know, wherever else you get your podcasts.
Yeah, so
Cool.
go do that. And then remains for us to say, you know, I don't know, David, whatever it is you say.
But yeah, just thanks again for coming on, Juliet.
Don't you feel valued, David?
No, I don't. It's actually a defining character piece of myself. Yeah, no, thank you, Juliet, for coming on. Always welcome. And, you know, we'll get you on again at some point soon. However, if people would like to get more episodes from us that may or may not have Juliet on them, that's patreon.com/praxiscast, £5 a month, or more if you want. Hint, hint. Gets you access to those episodes. It's £2 a month plus the Discord and all the offcuts of the episodes
Yeah,
which we
the
post in the
Discord.
Discord.
Everyone loves the
Yeah.
Discord.
Everyone loves the Discord, where the butter discourse has evolved into mustard discourse. Please send help. We need to talk about anything else.
Marmite?
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, we'll cut this episode before everything goes horribly wrong. Thank you again, Juliet, and
Yeah.
bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah, thanks, Juliet.
Bye.
Right.
See ya.